Hello, my name is Lara Tillotson and I am the Diva in Spirit, here to take you on a journey through all things fermented and distilled, and of course, all of the wonderful ways to enjoy them. So we are continuing our home bar series, focusing in on each of our Honey I'm Home cocktails. Today, we are going to talk about the Negroni, which for the record, is my Honey I'm Home cocktail. This is what I make for myself when I get home after a long day. This is what I make for myself to prepare while I'm cooking dinner at night. This is my Honey I'm Home. So now I'm gonna help make it your Honey I'm Home. So this cocktail, very old. It was created somewhere between 1915 and 1920, though not as nebulous a history as our friend the Martini had. This one's pretty straightforward. It all started when Pascal Olivier Count de Negroni walked into his favorite cafe in Florence and asked the bartender to fortify his Americano. So the Americano, also a very, very old cocktail. This one featured equal parts sweet vermouth and Campari that was then topped with club soda. So when Negroni asked the bartender to fortify the Americano, we omitted the club soda, added gin instead, and the Negroni was born. It was, of course, delicious, fortified, and became very popular. Negroni continued to order it every time he came in, and everybody else started to follow suit, and then it spread to the entire world, and the Negroni that we know and love now exists much as it has since it was invented in that cafe 100 years ago. This cocktail is so straightforward and so simple to make, we're just gonna jump right in and make one together. So again, we're talking about equal parts of each of these spirits. So we are going to use 1 ounce each of our gin, our Campari, and our sweet or red vermouth. I'm gonna start with my vermouth. Starting with the vermouth, but it really doesn't matter what order you pour these ingredients. But again, we are going to wait until all of the spirits are in the shaker before we add our ice. I'm gonna go 1 ounce of Campari. And finally, 1 ounce of our gin. Okay, because we're using gin, we are going to be stirring this cocktail, not shaking it. You should never, ever, ever shake a Negroni. Drop some ice in. Stir till she's nice and cold. Now, unlike the Martini, our Negroni is traditionally served on the rocks. I like for my rocks cocktails to use 1 big rock because it's going to melt more slowly and therefore not dilute your drink as much, but keep it nice and cold. And again, just look at that color. It's so darn pretty. We're going to finish this off with a little orange twist. On the side, and cheers. Absolutely perfect. The Negroni might just be the most perfect cocktail in history. The balance of sweet and bitter is just incomparable, and it makes it really easy to play with. So first of all, if the Campari is too bitter for you, this is an intensely bitter liqueur. I love it. It's a little much to start with. So if the Campari feels too much for you, try Aperol instead. Very similar flavor profile and also similar color, but it's just a little bit milder and a little bit lower in alcohol. So it's going to make a cocktail that's a little bit more approachable than the standard Negroni. So that's your first little variation you can play on the Negroni. Swap out some Aperol for your Campari. You can also, we've already got some Lillet on the bar from when we made our Vespers last week. You can make a blonde Negroni, and that's gonna make it even milder and more delicate. We're gonna swap out the Lillet for the Koki or whatever red vermouth you've got. So we're going to use Lillet vermouth instead of red. And then instead of getting Campari, which is a bitter liqueur that's based on quina bark, there's another family of bitter liqueurs that are called gentian, which is based on a different flower, basically a different root or bark. The most famous of these is Suze. Suze is as easy to find as Campari, similar price point, but it's going to be milder, more floral, and you can make a beautiful blonde Negroni featuring the Suze and Lillet instead of the red vermouth and Campari. So that's a fun place to go as well. My favorite variation on the Negroni is the Sbagliato. So I'm going to pause for a moment and drink my Negroni, rinse out my equipment, and we're going to come back and make a Negroni Sbagliato together. Welcome back. I hope you all took a moment to sit and enjoy your Negronis too. But now we are going to talk about the Negroni Sbagliato. So Sbagliato is the Italian word for mistake. And this variation on the Negroni did indeed begin as a mistake. It's known as a Negroni Sbagliato, but I have a feeling that its origin is actually more of an Americano Sbagliato. But the story is that somebody went to and ordered a Negroni, and the bartender mistakenly picked up a bottle of sparkling wine instead of gin to finish the Negroni. But knowing how Negronis are built and how Americanos are built, I suspect the truth is actually that he picked up a bottle of sparkling wine instead of a bottle of club soda. Either way, what we're talking about here is going to be equal parts vermouth and Campari that are going to be topped with sparkling wine instead of gin. So it's light and fizzy and crisp. If you are somebody that enjoys Aperol Spritz or Campari and soda, you're going to love this variation. It's a fabulous brunch cocktail. So in our shaker, we are going to stir and chill our Campari and vermouth. So let's start there. Again, we're going equal parts. So we're going to go an ounce each of these spirits. Start with our Campari. Again, any order is fine. It doesn't really matter as long as they both get into the shaker. Ice while we stir. And the Sbagliato, because again, we're using that sparkling wine, we're gonna pour this into a wine glass instead of a rocks or a martini glass. I'm gonna throw a couple of ice cubes in to make sure that everything stays chilled carefully so we don't shatter the glass. And then finish that with our sparkling wine. And of course, just like the Negroni, we're gonna finish this off with a little orange twist. Keep it nice and bright. In she goes, and cheers. These always make me want to just like sit outside in the sun, beautiful cafe, preferably in Florence if we could all do it. Perfect brunch cocktail. Cheers. This one is also a lot of fun to batch for parties. You can make a big batch with your Koki and your Campari, and then a la minute as your guests arrive, just top it with that Prosecco. One of my favorite party cocktails, this is something that I used to make for Christmas every year with my friends. It's a cocktail called Evenings in Kingston, which is basically a rum Negroni. So take your same basic ratios of like equal parts Campari, sweet vermouth, and dark rum, specifically Jamaican rum if you can, instead of gin. Batch that. And then as you're serving it, top each glass with some sparkling wine. Very festive, wonderful holiday cocktail. Evenings in Kingston, delicious. So these are our basic Negroni, some fun variations that you can make. Next time, we are going to start diving into the world of brown spirits. We've done our gin and vodka based honey I'm home. Now we're gonna do our bourbon and rye cocktails. So make sure that you've got your bourbon, you've got your rye, make sure you've got some bitters on your shelf, and we're gonna start making Manhattans and old fashions and all lovely things brown. So in the meantime, make sure that you're following me on Facebook and on Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and until then, I will be with you in spirit.